I've been playing. Oh, I should probably get the mic back here. That would have been really bad. I've been playing Commander since 2011. The first deck I ever built was Rift the Awakener because I was convinced back then that tokens were just way too good. A younger me didn't quite fully know everything about Magic at that point, but swinging with 50 plus creatures at a player while they had a couple of blockers felt so good. And back then, that felt like an unbeatable strategy, but obviously I've learned a lot since then. But one thing I would never let go of was the combat step. Throughout the years, I've seen the Commander meta change a ton. Early on, cards that clone creatures were everywhere, and they were premium removal spells for legendary creatures. Also, spells that shuffled creatures into their owner's library, like Oblation, were staples and expensive to purchase. The enter the battlefield creature meta was also huge for a long time, as many creatures were evaluated based on the popular saying, "Does it die to Doomblade?" Cards that died to removal but had great enter the battlefield effects were everywhere, and got even more popular with the printing of Panharmonicon. One thing that changed a lot over time too was the use of the combat step. Voltron decks were pretty big early on in Commander because that 21 damage insta-kill was a tempting build around. But over time, Voltron decks have fallen off in popularity. And even more than Voltron, combat in general has gotten less popular or not even used at all in a majority of Commander games. But if you've seen my other videos on this channel and made sure to hit the like button on them too, you'll see that I like to do things differently than most. I like to find the underused and obscure cards to do things that many players haven't considered. And that's the same for me when it comes to the combat step in Commander. My most played archetype is low to the ground aggro with cards that cost around 3 mana or less. I find myself looking at how good a creature is based on how much mana it costs and if it does something when it does damage to a player. There are a lot of ways to win a game of Magic. Most commonly, it's reducing your opponent's life total to 0. Combat is normally the way to do this in 1v1 formats. But in Commander, we got extra opponents and extra life on each of those opponents. And so it makes it really hard to get all that combat damage in, especially in a game that's speeding up the more and more we play. So instead of hitting players with creatures, many players resort to the easier routes to victory using tactics like infinite combos instead. And funnily enough, a great way to beat players who are looking to combo for a win is to attack them with creatures. On top of that, combat has a lot of fun interactions between players' board states. Swinging 5 to 10 damage worth of creatures at a player makes that player consider if they're going to block anything or lose a chunk of health. It might go unblocked the first time, but when it happens again, the choice of what to block with becomes really tough, as many times the blockers weren't meant to block, but now they kind of have to. This is something that I love about the combat step, because I like handing players the choice of eating damage to keep value on their board, or to essentially let my attackers turn into removal spells while they gobble up chump blockers my opponents didn't really want removed. They're throwing their own creatures into my wood chipper. There's something awesome about that over-targeted removal. Combat also changes the game for the player receiving the damage. They can't use many I spend my health as a resource cards when they're getting hit by creatures in combat too. Think of how rough Sylvan Library is when you're taking 8 damage to draw 3 cards and getting hit by creatures between turns for more life loss. Necropotence is an incredibly good card that most players are going to spend a bunch of life on to draw cards. But when they're staring down a board of creatures that's going to hit them for damage on top of it, they can't spend as much as they'd like. Having combat be something that players have to consider for their own ways to survive and win a game changes how players play in general. Black cards in Commander are often seen as very powerful overall because you can use your life total as a resource with many of them. And I don't disagree with this at all, but I also don't want players to do this for free. If the board is looking even between all players and I have a choice on which player to attack, I'm probably going after the player running black cards in their deck, as they're likely already paying life for cards, and I got to reduce how often they can do that. We can even see some evidence of all this in cards that Wizards of the Coast have printed. The goad mechanic is controversial in a lot of play groups because many players hate being forced to attack with their value creatures that were never meant to attack. And on top of that, the defending player who's being hit by goaded creatures wasn't hoping to block with anything either. It causes a ton of problems for those who don't use the combat step in most of their games. And I think this is the reason why goad exists in Magic in the first place. Goad isn't very useful in 1v1 formats, but in multiplayer, it's amazing. And let's not forget the benefits you get as the player engaging in combat. Many creatures exist with the line of text that says when this creature deals combat damage to a player, and then there's an effect afterwards. For example, essentially every ninja in the game has this text with an effect afterwards. There are some incredible ones that are repeatable every turn with combat, and you don't necessarily have to be running an entire combat-focused deck to make use of these cards. Over the last few months, I've been running Ninja of the Deep Hours in every blue deck I make. It's a little expensive to hardcast, but when you ninjutsu this guy out for cheap and then draw a card every time it hits a player for damage, you start feeling pretty good about drawing an extra card every turn. It's cheap, it puts players in a position to leave up blockers, or you start to slowly gain card advantage for the low cost of paying 2 mana one time. This is just one example, and it's a small one, but there's so many cards we could talk about for this. Maybe I should make some videos on creatures that have effects like this? Let me know in the comments if that's something to be interested in. But my point is this, many of these cards aren't used very much because they die to removal, and have to not only attack, but also hit a player for damage with their effects. And despite these truths, I don't know many players who want to burn removal spells on a Ninja of the Deep Hours, but they also don't want me to draw cards every turn and do damage to them. It's so interesting to stack all these effects on top of each other to see how valuable many of these creatures are. Ninja of the Deep Hours isn't just a 2/2. It's a draw engine if unblocked, a removal magnet if it draws too many cards, a creature to force an opponent to leave up blockers or play a blocker that they weren't planning to, and a blocker for yourself if there's return fire. And I'm not saying Ninja of the Deep Hours is insane. It's really just an average card, but it shows my point. Maybe if I use something more complicated, like Ansrag the Quake Mole, it hit home a little bit more because Ansrag's just way better as a combat creature. If you're a player who doesn't normally consider the combat advantages of a creature when choosing cards for your deck, my challenge to you is to give it a shot. Don't go all in and do Voltron. I think that's a whole different archetype than what I'm advocating for. But when you see creatures with decent power, toughness, keywords, combat effects, but they have nothing to do with your combo or static value engines, give it another look. Try playing a handful of cards and actually attack with them. Especially if the player who's setting up defenses to combo out and win on a future turn. It's a great way to equalize the meta that is racing to draw their infinite and win. And this ties into a bigger topic that I won't get into here, but if your Commander games are getting stale recently, mixing things up with cards you once considered garbage may reignite fun in your games. Brew a deck archetype that's way different than you'd normally do. Or pick a combination of colors that's new to you and give it a shot. Heck, you can even take smaller steps and actually commit to swinging at a player with a 1/1 token sometime, just to see what it does to your group and how it changes the game in general. You'd be surprised how much chip damage matters in a game. It may not be so obvious as an infinite combo win, but many games are won because of the small skirmishes of damage accumulated over a game. One thing I do in all of my Commander games is think, if I don't want to block with this creature, then I should attack with it. What creatures are on your board that you never want to chump block with? Don't just let them sit there. Get in there with combat. Obviously, you got to pick a safe place to attack with them, but if there's an open board to swing at with your Beast Whisperer, get that 2 damage. There's obviously always potential downsides for attacking, but there's also many downsides for not. You'll have to practice and gather data on what the best option is based on who you play with, but this is a mentality I have and I really enjoy it. I like getting as much value out of the cards I play as I can, including the chip damage with the creature I'm never going to use as a blocker. So what are some of your favorite Combat Matters creatures? Give me some suggestions in the comments. I need some more ideas for my brews. And hey, by the way, if you've made it this far into the video, just want to say super thank you not only for watching this one, but for hitting 1,000 subscribers on this channel. We got there in just over a month. I'm shocked, but I'm also grateful. Thanks to all of you. Have a fantastic day, and we'll see you again at Cardboard Brewing Company.